Kevin was an ordinary 5-year-old boy. Sometimes he misbehaved and disobeyed like all boys his age. His grandmother loved her grandson more than anyone else. She pitied him and tried to replace his mother. But no one knew that every night when he went to bed and closed his eyes, the boy dreamed that his wish would one day come true. Kevin was not dreaming of a new toy or a bicycle. His only wish was to live together with his mother again. His mother's name was Jennifer, and his parents had divorced 4 years ago. His father had left for another woman and had forgotten all about his son. The man was not ready for the difficulties, the sleepless nights and the baby's illnesses and financial problems. After divorce, Jennifer moved in with her mother. When the baby grew up for kindergarten, the woman got a job in a supermarket. She often took evening shifts to earn more money. On such days, Jennifer would come home after midnight when the child was already asleep. Kevin's upbringing was handled by his grandmother. The elderly woman took her grandson to and from kindergarten, read bedtime stories, and engaged in his development. It went on like that for almost 3 years. And then Jennifer had a boyfriend. The man's name was Ray, and he was almost 15 years older than Jennifer. He held the position of deputy director of the company and was divorced. He had a 14-year-old daughter who lived with her mother but visited him every weekend. After a few months of dating, the man asked Jennifer to move in with him to live together. The spacious apartment with modern renovation and panoramic windows, a gym and a swimming pool on the property really appealed to Jennifer, and the woman agreed to live with him. Jennifer's mother reproachfully looked at her daughter and asked if she was going to leave her son. But the daughter replied that she would take her son by all means, but as soon as she had settled her life. But the woman lied to her mother. In fact, she did not even tell Ray that she had a son. Jennifer gathered her things, hugged her mother, patted her son's head and left the house. Ray was already waiting for her in the car outside. Love and hope for a family, as well as a new life of prosperity, flashed bright prospects in front of Jennifer. So she unashamedly plunged into her new life. A month passed. Jennifer was in love. Her eyes literally shone with happiness. Ray was also very affectionate and attentive to her. Jennifer closed her eyes and mentally imagined pictures of their happy life. She imagined Ray becoming a father to Kevin and them having a baby and living soul to soul. So the woman's fantasies were one brighter than the other, but life decided otherwise. After learning about Jennifer's child, the man stood on the balcony for a long time, smoking and thinking about something. Jennifer waited for his decision, afraid to utter a word. She had already understood that Ray had a rather stern temper. He was used to leading, and did not tolerate objections and bickering even at home. A man came into the kitchen and said he did not want her son to live with them. He works hard and prefers peace and quiet at home. And the boy would be noisy and disturbing, plus he might ruin expensive renovations. Finally, he concluded that he had a grown daughter of his own, and she had a young son of her own, so she would have to take care of him herself if she wanted to live with him. The young woman in no way expected such a turn of events. Ray's cruel words were a sudden blow that was unbearably hard to overcome. The pain of resentment clutched her chest like a cold iron ring. Tears appeared on her pale cheeks, but Jennifer did her best to restrain her emotions. She understood that it made no sense to sort things out. She was not even his wife. Kevin was someone else's child to him, whom even his own father had long forgotten. Ray said menacingly that there should be no little children in his apartment, and then slammed the door loudly and went into the bedroom. Jennifer silently nodded in agreement. She mentally calmed down and decided to become a good mistress, to surround Ray with even more care, and maybe then he would change his mind. In the meantime, her son would live comfortably under the care of his loving grandmother. Day after day, life passed in everyday worries. A year went by. At first, Jennifer visited her mother and son every weekend. But the parting was always painful for both of them, especially Kevin was very upset and her visits became less frequent. Jennifer reassured herself that the boy was accustomed and comfortable there, and that his grandmother was an excellent substitute for her. More than once she herself fulfilled motherly duties to Ray's daughter. She prepared parties for the girl, helped her with math and literature, and all this instead of surrounding her own child with love and affection. She didn't know that before little Kevin went to sleep, he took a photo album from the shelf. The boy looked at pictures where he and his mother were walking in the park, sitting on a bench in the park and feeding pigeons or eating ice cream in a cafe. And just before Christmas, the boy wrote a letter to Santa Claus. In the letter he said that he behaved very well this year and that he only wants his mother to come back and they can live together as before. Coincidence or not, Jennifer began to grow weary of such a life. Her passion faded, as did her hopes for a happy life with Ray. No matter how hard she tried to be idyllic, he never wanted to accept her son. When Jennifer's mother showed her daughter Kevin's letter to Santa, the woman cried. She suddenly realized that she was living with hopes for a happy future, and at the same time she was depriving her own son of a happy present. That same evening she gathered her belongings and without saying anything to Ray returned to her son. Kevin was happy. He asked Jennifer several times if she would ever leave again. He could not believe to the end that she would always be there. Ray called her in the evening and asked what was going on. Jennifer said that she was tired of being afraid of his difficult character, to perform the duties of a wife without marriage, and most importantly, she could no longer live without her son. Then Ray asked her if she had thought it through well, because she wouldn't get a second chance. Jennifer just laughed and hung up. A few years later all Jennifer's dreams came true. She married a good man. Even on the first date she told him that she had a son. The man was not frightened by this. He treated her son as an essential part of Jennifer. Before they were married, they would go on picnics together, go to the amusement park and to the movies. He always found something to please not only Jennifer, but also her son. The boy who had been so long without male attention finally found it in abundance. And a year after the wedding, Kevin had a little sister. Jennifer sat by the fireplace with her loving husband. The children were asleep next to each other, and they had to be moved to their cribs later. The woman looked at the fire and thought what a fool she had been. She was unbearably ashamed that she was willing to exchange her son for a life of ease with a man who did not really love her. Fortunately, before it was too late, the woman realized that no relationship was worth the tears of a young child.